Hello, Immortal Cultivators! Welcome back to another episode of Let's Play with Busy PCBs. Today, we're diving into something a little different. Immortal Life, the farming game. So, if you're a steadfast fan of the farming sims like Stardew Valley, Harvest Moon, Sun Havens, and the likes, then you may want to take a closer look at this one, which has a bit of Chinese fantasy element with it, the Xianxia, as well as RPG elements. So a brief note, what is Xianxia? Xianxia literally translated as Immortal Heroes, which is a Chinese genre heavily influenced with Chinese philosophies, folk religion, alchemy, and basically the people are just trying to cultivate to reach immortality. Personally, as a fan of Xianxia, I really look forward to this game when I first discovered it. Now, my first impression after a few hours of gameplay. I would say it is a very charming and visually appealing, so that's a plus point for me because I love beautiful graphics. The vibrant colors and the hand-painted textures do make the world feel very warm and inviting, which is very perfect for a farming sim. So there's a lot of charm in the character designs too, and the environments are quite lovely to explore. Although I would say that for an RPG, right, it doesn't start with a lot of customizing your in-game character right at the beginning, unlike some other RPGs where right at the beginning of the game you already have the options to customize your in-game character. So this does not happen until a bit later in the game. So before we dive into the elements that a farming fan will look forward to in a typical farming title, let me just put a caveat here that this is based on my first few hours of gameplay. Of course, this could change with later updates, as I can see that the developers are still rolling out some updates and patches from time to time. On the outset, no, this is not a multiplayer game, it is single player. But it all depends on whether you prefer a more laid-back game or something to collaborate, to play with your friends or your daughters or your family. So this is good if you prefer a more laid-back game, but this could also be something that the developer team may look into, because after all the story kind of fit into it where you are supposed to work with people to rebuild the sack. Next, let's try to take a look at the NPCs available. This is a personal criterion for me because socializing do provide some immersive experience if it is done right. So, there are not a lot of characters in this game in comparison to other titles. This could be a plus point or not, depending on your preference. You started with a handful of them, which helps because it doesn't feel as overwhelming as some other titles like My Time at Portia, who throw you into the deep end in the beginning when you're still struggling with all these unique names and learning about the world and all the other elements that come with the game. So if you're easily overwhelmed, then this game is definitely for you because it started with a very limited map and interactions, and these interactions and map slowly expand to include more characters and areas. The good thing is that these NPCs do shower you with quite a bit of gift, and you could even ask them for help to gather stuff, something like those pellicles in Monster Hunter World, minus the fee of course. So that brings in a more cohesive immersion that everyone is trying to contribute and not just you doing your own solo show trying to rebuild the entire set. However, do take note that it may be a bit common for this kind of title to not have romance. Not that the farming sim do not have romance, but specifically for Xianxia, because Xianxia is more about the camaraderie and the fellowship between the members rather than that. It's not so much of a romance, it's more like a platonic kind of friendship and sibling love. Now, let's dive into the basic farming mechanics. As with most farming sim titles, the gameplay is rooted in traditional farming mechanics from planting crops to gathering resources. However, what sets them apart is the integration of the immortality and the mana aspect of it, which is something quite similar to Sun Haven. Although I would say this is like the ancient Chinese version rather than the Western version of this kind of mana integrated farming sim game. So the story focuses on this character who is granted eternal life, which open up some really interesting narrative possibilities, which I hope to discover from the gameplay. So the first thing is on farming. I love the concept of using spells, so it's not as tedious as other farming titles. They literally just remove the tedious part of the farming, and this is unlocked pretty early on in the game, unlike Sun Haven, which you still need to progress quite a bit for you to unlock using spell to water the plants. So when you're starting a new game and the expectation was to farm and seed and to water tile by tile, that could get a bit tedious and a bit grinding at the time. So yes, the farming element is there without being too tedious. Of course, the usual restriction on mana and stamina early game is there, but personally I do not find it too restrictive unlike some other titles, because some other titles you either really have to spam hard into foraging and trying to eat them to gain stamina to continue the day, or you just hit the bait early because there's nothing much for you to do. So for this game, right, there is these cute little blue chi orbs basically granting you mana to do some early game stuff. I think what I did right was that early on I chose the option to increase my stamina, so there are a few things for you to choose, and coincidentally the one that I chose increased my stamina. This is quite important because unlike the mana and your health, stamina cannot be cultivated, but of course you could later on unlock through the wandering traveler, who you have to perform some seasonal tasks in exchange for the coins, the special coins, for you to permanently upgrade your stamina. I did that quite early on in the game, about 7 in-game days to 8 in-game days. I tried to unlock that permanent stamina, and that do help with my gameplay a lot. These are tips that perhaps we can do in the next video. Alright, so back to the next aspect of Immortal Life. What I love in this game is cooking. The mini game is slightly different from the other titles. So the other titles usually you just sort of choose the correct ingredients and voila, you get the food. Whereas over here you do experience a mini game where there are different stations from chopping to boiling to steaming to frying, and you should not mess up those procedures. So it's a bit like Overcooked series, and I kind of like it because it offers some refreshing experience in comparison to other titles, and it's really imitating the real life experience of cooking with the cute animations. So you do get to earn some extra spirit shards. So spirit shards are their in-game currency. Basically you don't collect money, but instead you collect this kind of spirit shards that provide you with chi and stuff. Occasionally there are tasks for you to help out as a kitchen helper, and from there you could get easily 300 to 500 shards, which can be really helpful, especially at the beginning of the game, because money is hard to come by, and I am someone who tend to hoard most of my produce, because coming from a few farming titles, you would know that most of the produce would be off season, and suddenly there will be some kind of task or gift or some level asking you to provide this produce, which you then have to wait for 1 whole year just to get them that particular ingredient. So I tend to hoard a bit. Also to note that when I talk about hoarding, right, most of the time at early game we have a problem with storage. For this game it is quite generous with storage in the beginning, so you tend to need to have some kind of rings to unlock this internal pouch that you have to store stuff. Of course, later on when you manage to unlock the warehouse, storage will not be such a mega problem. There is no animal husbandry per se, because this kind of fits with the overall theme of the game, where Xianxia, they don't really slaughter animals for meat, but they do have some beekeeping and pets later on in the game, which you do get to discover. It does take some time to reach there, honestly, but it is okay because earlier on there are some other elements that you would have to focus on, so these are a bit of additional things that you could do. You can try to speed up into that aspect of the game if you really want to have pets or bees by completing the Mysterious Girl questline. Basically speed through that questline and ignore some of the other main questlines. Next, let's explore into the mining and fighting monsters aspect of the game. So for the mining, unfortunately, is a bit disappointing because it is not as in-depth as the other farming sim title. Based on my first few hours of gameplay, it's just hitting some random rocks, no special indication that these might be more precious stones, minus the occasional color differences. Fighting monsters in turn are more fun in this title because it is somewhat similar to other RPG, but what is really refreshing and really caught my attention is that there is this new system called a breakthrough. So if you're a fan of Xianxia, you would know that this breakthrough is basically the main character trying to fight their inner demon to either successfully level up and being closer to immortality, or if they fail, down they go with an express lane to hell. Just trying to be funny. Actually, it's more like if they fail the breakthrough, usually in the Xianxia genre, if it's a mega failure, they will end up being a demon. Of course, in this game, there is the similar aspect where if you fail your breakthrough, which I did in my first gameplay, then I am barred from going through the breakthrough again in my second round without waiting for a number of days to recover or trying to buy some elixirs, which I'm too broke to buy. But that is about 2 in-game days, I would say. But the thing is, for this breakthrough, which kind of makes sense, is that you do not naturally progress through. So in Stardew Valley or some other titles, you would naturally level up from level 1 to level 2 with some additional benefit. But in this case, if you fail the breakthrough, you do not reap the benefits of the level up immediately. You would have to go through the breakthrough, and whatever extra points that you gain from that level will stay stagnant, and once you reach into level 2, you would start from 0 again. So for example, if the first level it takes about 5,000 points and you earn 8,000 points and you still have not go through the breakthrough, that would be a waste for you. So whenever if you have already hit the upper limit of the bar, it is advisable for you to try to go through the breakthrough. Of course, the game will teach you how to level up easier, how to fight off the monsters in the breakthrough, but basically try to break through as soon as possible, otherwise whatever points that you gain from farming, cooking, foraging, those will become extra and useless when you level up. So the fishing mechanics in this game are quite simple. There is no bait, no stamina fulfillment, no special bar to fulfill, nothing. Hear the splash and off you go, hitting that button to catch them. So there are quite a few good fishing spots in this game. So there is not just one fishing spot, but I would say about close to 5 or 6, even though it's early in game. And of course you do need to put some effort into building these spots, but generally no, there is not a lot of variety in the fishing. So depending, once again, if you like something simple, this game is definitely for you. But if you would love a closer imitation to real life experience, sorry to say they do not have it here. Special mention on festival events, an aspect that most of us farming fans will look forward to. So I would say that Immortal Life doesn't disappoint in this aspect, as they do have quite a few nicely done events that color up your road to immortality. For example, early in game, you would have this Dragon Boat Race. It is quite nicely done, where you get to interact with different NPCs up to 3 times to win some gift. So if you succeed on the first round, the good news is that you can still go for another 2 rounds with either the same NPC or a different NPC, and at each point where you succeed, I would say even if you fail, you would still get 15 points of friendship. You would then ask me, is 15 points really that much? Well, considering the fact that talking to them only earned you 1 point a day, yes, I would say that is quite a bit to gain. So I've pretty much covered all the aspects of the game in this review. As to what can be improved, obviously the content part is not as fulfilling as Stardew Valley, but that is understandable. I would say that the content is still quite sufficient, but of course, as a player, we always like to have more contents and NPCs. The good thing is that there is no game-breaking bugs, although I would say that the controls are a bit counterintuitive for me, because I use controller and it just doesn't feel right. It took me quite a few solid hours to just kind of adapt and get used to the controllers, the buttons. But this is not an issue when I play with keyboard or mouse, because I get to adjust the setting to my own personal preference. The good thing is that they actually remove a lot of the grinding tediousness in the usual farming mechanics, so that's something that I do like about this game. So if I were to give them a rating, I would say that would be about 8.5 to 10 for the full price. But of course, if the price drop during a mega sales, especially with the autumn sales and the winter sales coming up in Steam, then yes, it could go as high as probably 9 for me. It is immersive, it is relaxing, and the graphics are really cute and beautiful, with just the right amount of fantasy magic. So I still recommend this to the fan of games like Stardew Valley or Room Factory, because there is this added bonus of a magical twist. This is something closer to Sun Haven, like I said earlier, but without all the DLCs. It is the ancient Chinese version of the Stardew Valley, so that will be quite refreshing for the farming communities in terms of the story and the setting. So that's it for today's review. What do you think? Are you ready to grow some magical crops and live forever? Drop a comment below and let me know if you'll be picking this one up. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and ring that bell for more gaming reviews and gameplay. Until then, happy farming and cultivating. Ta-ta!